Hey all, here OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at the VUCATIMES N7. This is an ultra-budget Android tablet that has a 7-inch screen and sells for under 60 bucks. Sometimes goes on sale for as low as around 50, and it runs on Android 10 Go Edition for a pretty stock-feeling experience. Has an entry-level quad-core processor that is clocked up to 1.8 gigahertz. There's the typical Bluetooth as well as built-in Wi-Fi, and also comes in 3 colors, the black, there is a green, as well as a purple version. So its closest competitor would be something like Amazon's Fire 7 tablet, which also sells for around the same price. The Fire 7 actually is about $10 more on average, so this is going to be a slightly cheaper model. And the other selling point here is that stock Android 10.0 compared to Amazon's tablets, which are using Fire OS. It's a more heavily customized version of Android that doesn't give you access to the Google services. So if you want something more stock feeling but also really cheap, this might be the model to take a look at. Now here we have a quick user guide as well as the instruction manual. We also have a charging cable which is using a slightly older micro USB standard, but that's fine considering that the Amazon Fire also uses micro USB at this price, and there's also a wall adapter. So taking a closer look at the design of this tablet, it is constructed entirely out of plastic, which again is the norm at this price, but still feels reasonably solid, doesn't really creak or cringe when you hold it, and we have a single loudspeaker located on the rear, but that's pretty similar also to Amazon's Fire tablet, which you can see here on the side as a quick contrast. The camera here is located on the back. There's also a front-facing one for video chatting. The resolution here is very basic. It's only about VGA. So it's kind of like a sandwich design, even though it's still made out of plastic, has a contrasting texture. There's a volume rocker, a power key, and then on the very top there's a standard 3.5mm headphone jack, micro USB for expanding on the built-in memory, which by the way comes with only 16 gigabytes. So similar again to the Fire 7 tablet, but very entry level. You definitely want to supplement it if you plan on installing more apps. There's also the micro USB for charging. The battery in here, by the way, is 2,800 milliamp hours, which is on the pretty small side as far as tablets are concerned. We have phones nowadays with larger batteries than that, so this is not going to be an endurance king. In my testing, I could get about a day's use before I needed to recharge it again. Screen on time is under 4 hours. Bezel sizes on the N7 are a little bit smaller than the Fire 7. As you can see there, both of these have the exact same display size and resolution, coming in at roughly HD quality. So it's not going to be pen sharp, but at the very least, they are using IPS displays, which means that viewing angles are better than they used to be on budget tablets. If you kind of shift it around and look at it from various degrees, the colors still look pretty similar, despite the fact that it isn't the highest resolution or PPI, and also it's not a laminated screen, so like the Fire 7, there is a slight gap between the touchscreen glass and the display underneath, so it does reflect a bit of light, and could be a little harder to read if you're outdoors, but not too big of an issue under most lighting environments. Now turning it on, we are immediately greeted to the Android 10 Go Edition. So if you're unfamiliar, Android Go Edition is designed for hardware with lower specifications, and it runs pretty well. It's giving you more optimized versions of apps, which takes up less memory and also consume less data. So there's the Go Edition of YouTube, there's Gmail Go Edition, Assistant Go Edition, and Gallery Go Edition, and also Maps Go Edition. With that being said, you can still download the full versions of regular Android APK apps using the Play Store. Anyways, dragging down a notification shade, we have access to things like changing the display brightness. We can also toggle on and off things like a dark mode. Right now it's turned on by default because of the power saving options, but if I switch it off, you can see how the menus and apps like YouTube and Gmail will also transition into this white background. And in terms of the navigation, you do have access to gestures which are supported in the settings. So this one here, you can just kind of swipe up halfway to take a look at your recent applications and multitask, versus if you kind of do a full swipe up motion, it will take you through all of your applications in this drawer. So it's definitely a very stock feeling experience, which is neat. In terms of the general navigation, it still is reasonable. With a really budget tablet like this, it's all about setting your expectations in line. Since the hardware is entry level, you're not going to get, say, flying performance compared to other flagship devices, which are many times the price. But in terms of general usage, it's acceptable. We can, in fact, jump into the settings here just to take a quick peek, and we can see that, again, loading things are a little bit longer, but not too bad. Very stock feeling experience. You can take a look at about the tablet. We can verify that indeed it's running on Android 10.0, which is pretty good to see on something so low cost. You can also revert back into the typical method by using just 3 buttons or keys down below, a more traditional look. You can see that it's going to take a moment here to go back to this. So briefly taking a look at the camera, again, it's very basic. You won't be doing anything too out of the ordinary here, but it's good enough for making out text details. We can also swipe over from the edges to switch into video recording mode. And as aforementioned, you won't be seeing a ton of detail, but for some basic quick snaps and document scanning, it will work when you're in a pinch. Briefly jump into the YouTube player here, and it does support the Gboard keyboard by default, so it is again extremely stock. Loading times won't necessarily be the fastest, but once videos do play back, things are still fairly smooth in terms of you don't have to wait too long for them to buffer. It just continues to play back here without too many complaints. So the takeaway here is the speaker quality is average, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, it's a little bit quiet, even at the maximum volume, but it doesn't really distort or sound too tinny, I suppose. I wish the volume could be punched up a little bit more. The best thing here, though, is you can always use standard headphones or use wireless using Bluetooth. Of course, we can also download the full version of the YouTube app if you want to use that instead of that light YouTube Go version. We can see that the resolution of the video can be changed up to, again, HD. It's still a very enjoyable experience. Brightness is also sufficient in most conditions. If you're outdoors, it could be, again, a slightly more difficult, but also not too bad. Definitely not the dimmest screen I've seen for budget tablets. In terms of our currently open apps, we can jump into them just by flicking up. The animations, and you can see how it's displayed, is a little different, more simplified on Android Go compared to regular Android 10.0. So overall, things still work surprisingly well for basic tasks like this. Otherwise, if we do a quick look at the web browsing, and overall, this is a pretty complicated site, so we do expect slightly longer load times for all the ads and various elements, but after which point the overall kind of scrolling is still reasonable, I'd say. You can keep around 4 tabs open in the browser and things still perform all right. Text is also clear enough that you can enjoy without any real complaints. Tablet does get slightly warm on the rear after you use it for more than an hour, but it never gets too hot. This is not a processor that really thermo-throttles or anything crazy like that. Now, in terms of the Go editions of Google as well as the Assistant, there's a search bar on the top here that gives you access to a few different things. First of all, you can tap on this icon to do a quick Google Lens search. You'll give it permission to access your camera to do a quick search if you want to translate it into a different language and harness the power of Google's excellent AI and machine learning capabilities. Now I can also tap on the search bar here to access my Google services, things like recommended apps, in addition to things like using the Assistant. It's not going to be always on by default just to conserve on data, and also you can see things like news feeds, which are customized to your Google account. It's not going to automatically refresh towards the left of the home screen like on regular versions of Android, but instead you have to tap on this to see it. But from here we can slide over to the left to see our Discover panel, so it takes another step just to prevent auto updates and refreshes from consuming power in the background. And I can also see some fun little animations, which are classic in Android Go, like these running animals, which Google have very playfully implemented into the platform here. And then I can swipe over also from the right here to see a full list of all the web apps. So for example, if we tap on Amazon.com, you can see it just opens up in the Google app, and it's optimized to load pretty quickly even on hardware like this. Now, as aforementioned, you can still go into the Play Store and download any regular versions of games and titles, but I would really recommend very simple ones on entry-level hardware like this. So for games, 2D style of titles will probably be best, and if you are trying to do something too graphically intensive, things like PUBG or Asphalt is really not going to be a great experience. It takes a few seconds longer to load back the game, but once loaded, it actually works all right. I don't see too many significant kind of drops in terms of frames and animations on simple titles like this. Other ones which come to mind include Stack, things like Angry Birds, Fruit Ninja, things like that definitely work without too many issues, and I'm still able to kind of progress in the game here and still have a pretty enjoyable overall experience as you can see. So that's more or less it for our hands-on review of the VUCATIMES N7, an ultra-budget 7-inch tablet here in 2020. Tablets in general are getting slightly less popular these days as our phones' displays are getting larger, but something that's ultra-cheap like this could still be neat for, the purposes of just throwing around without worrying about it breaking, something to take for maybe on a road trip if you want to do some quick e-reading or watching some videos for the kids. It is going to be an interesting competitor, I think, to the Amazon Fire 7. The fact that every single time you wake it up you see an advertisement just because Amazon is subsidizing on the cost is not as good as something here, which you have virtually no bloatware out of the box, aside from the standard applications. With that being said, this is still not really a performance champion. In fact, in certain cases, it can still feel a little bit sluggish and slow, but as long as you have patience, it is still definitely serviceable, and for that, I think it offers a good enough experience at a bargain price. You can check out more details if you are interested in the links down below, but for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the VUCATIMES N7.